Monday's podcast.
The worst episode ever. Rest assured that I was on the internet within minutes, registering my disgust throughout the world.
Topics from comic books, video games, movies, and more.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Let the game begin.
I have no date. A 2-liter bottle of Shasta and my all-rush mixtape. Let's rock.
And here's your host.
And welcome to Man Cave Mondays podcast. I'm Bobby, and today we're talking about the series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And today I have joining me is one of my fellow cavemen, Christian. Christian, how you doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself, Bobby?
We're doing great. Other cavemen will be joining us shortly.
Yep. I know Alberto's joining in soon. I don't think anybody else will be. I think it might just be the three of us.
Might be just the three of us.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. It's one more than we had for WandaVision.
So let's get started. So let's just catch everyone up to speed. So Christian, why don't you set us up? What set up the Falcon and the Winter Soldier at the end of Endgame?
So
how was it set up?
So Falcon and Winter Soldier was set up, I would say, pretty most directly by two movies. It was set up pretty directly by Endgame itself, as well as Captain America, Civil War. I apologize. Captain America, Civil War.
Yeah.
Both those movies were kind of the two movies that kind of directly led into this. Endgame most directly by the spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen Endgame some 3 years later, with old Captain America returning from the past and giving his shield to Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon, kind of passing the torch, as it were, giving him that shield and saying, "Hey, it's your turn. He's had his time. He's lived his life, and now it's your turn to kind of carry that torch, so to speak." And you had Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, who had gone through this massive transition over the MCU history, starting in the Captain America: The First Avenger, going through the Winter Soldier. Yeah, Winter Soldier when he was turned by Hydra as this assassin. You got Civil War when Captain America basically fought the rest of the Avengers to protect Bucky, as well as other various things. But and so those two movies very heavily tied into this, also with the Sokovia Accords having a little bit of a play in the series, but mostly you had the character of Baron Zemo show up, as well as Sharon Carter, who originated in the Winter Soldier,
right,
and then showed up in Civil War as well. So this very much felt like almost a fourth Captain America movie in the sense of the story that it had been telling. It was definitely directly following along those movies, as well as being heavily influenced, of course, by Avengers Endgame and the events that had left off.
Right. And also just as comic book precedents, both Bucky and Sam Wilson, the Falcon, have both took on the mantle of Captain America.
Captain America. Yep.
And also there's also I'm forgetting his name right now. U.S. agent John Walker.
Yeah, John Walker, who has also been portrayed Captain America in the comic books and was introduced early on into this series as Captain America.
Right.
So kind of the government Captain America, as it were.
So what set up? So how did this again? Spoiler warning. Just to recap the show.
Spoiler warning. If you haven't watched the show yet, go watch it. It's fantastic. We'll be here. You can come back and listen to us afterwards.
So what happened? First couple episodes, like just a very quick intake.
So
what happened in the show?
Quick rapid fire. We started with kind of Sam's immediate ramifications of getting that shield and what he wanted to do with it. And so he ultimately decided that what he thought was best was to give the shield back to the country and to the government, essentially, to put on display.
Right.
He thought that it belonged in the Captain America Museum, which is something we've seen a number of times throughout the MCU. This museum dedicated to Captain America and the rest of his squadron and all of that. And so he felt the shield belonged there.
And this takes place how long after Avengers Endgame?
They said, was it 6 weeks?
About 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
I think it was 6 weeks. Well, 6 months I know is when Far From Home takes place.
Okay, so
I think it was 6 weeks because WandaVision was 2 weeks, I believe. Okay, and I think this is 6. If I'm not mistaken. I think it was like 6 weeks to like 8 weeks by the time it was all said and done. I think.
So this is all taking place
about 2 weeks ish. Yeah, a couple weeks right after Endgame.
And when we say after the blip, that everyone got unsnapped.
Yeah,
and that's what they're calling it in the Winter Soldier is the blip.
Yeah,
or in the MCU is the blip.
So the blip, the blip refers to the two snaps. Refers to Thanos' snap, which erased half of humanity, and then Hulk's snap, which brought back that same half of humanity. And so we're referring to that kind of 5-year time period where half of humanity was gone, and now all of a sudden they're back. And this is kind of WandaVision. We really didn't get to see too much of that. We saw a little bit with Monica Rambeau and kind of her ramifications of being unblipped, as it were. We
saw more world ramifications.
This definitely kind of dug right in and showed us the immediate consequences of that blip or unblip, whichever way you want to look at it.
And what were the consequences worldwide for us non-superhero
were
people?
Massive amounts of displacement, homelessness, shortages of supplies and jobs, and you had this weird balance of trying to determine, okay, people who 5 years ago disappeared and their houses were sold, their jobs were given away, their significant others moved on, and now 5 years later they're back, and you have all of these pieces you're trying to juggle. Do they get their job back? Do they get their house back? Do they get their spouse back? Where do they go from there, and what belongs to them still now that they are essentially brought back from the dead after 5 years?
And the country was essentially one. The whole world was
right.
Like
they united under this common suffering of losing half the population. So many of these countries had to band together to survive, because they had suddenly lost half of their leadership, half of their militaries, half of their civilians' resources. They had lost half of everything. And so the world as a whole had to band together. And now that all of these people have come back, you got high-ranking officials, you got military officials, civilians, you got everybody from every walk of life is suddenly thrust back into this world that has spent 5 years building without them and connecting without them, and they're trying to acclimate themselves to this life. And this show focused more on the aspect of those who were here the whole time and are now being forced out of their homes, or are now trying to be relocated, or new jobs and that sort of stuff. People who were here the whole time and were fighting to keep the world running, and now people after 5 years come back and they're almost tossed to the side.
Which sets up our antagonist, which is not the Flag Smasher, which was an actual person.
Yeah.
But this is
the Flag Smashers, it turned into a resistance group of sorts. In the comic books, Flag Smasher was an individual person, and they kind of turned that character more into an ideal, as it were.
But they took the actual character and they gender swapped.
Yeah, they gender swapped it, but also it wasn't necessarily just her. She wasn't the Flag Smasher. So they gender swapped kind of that idea of her being the leader. In the comic books, the Flag Smasher was a male figure, and then they did make the leader of the Flag Smashers in the TV show, Carly Morgenthau, a female character, who she is actually the same actress who played the resistance leader in Solo, Star Wars story.
Yes, she did. I actually have. There you go.
Yeah, right there. So you can clearly see that Disney definitely is a fan of hers to pretty significant roles within the last few years. Both very similar in the sense of, resistance leader kind of fighting against the man. But yeah, so first kind of jumping back and forth here, but ultimately they realize that the government has kind of tricked Sam, as it were, and is not planning on keeping the shield in a museum. And they've appointed a new Captain America, John Walker, who by all rights is the perfect soldier.
Right.
He's multiple time war hero, got multiple medals of honor, Purple Hearts, all of the stuff. He is everything that the military would want their Captain America to be.
And without no super surge serum to begin with. He was just
he was just the perfect soldier, which for anybody who is a long-term MCU watcher, you remember that in Captain America the First Avenger, the main reason why Steve Rogers was picked wasn't because he was a perfect soldier.
Because he was a good man.
It was because he was a good man. And in fact, that was why, like, what he was told was, as long as you stay a good man, it doesn't matter what kind of soldier you are. And so this was kind of almost the exact opposite of that. Somebody who has good intentions and is a great soldier, but might not be the best person, versus Steve Rogers, who was above all and else the best person. And then that made him a good soldier. Right. And so it was definitely an interesting juxtaposition for people who have been following the MCU long term. And I mean, the most immediate glaring thing that you notice is not one time in the 20 some odd movies leading up to this show did Steve Rogers ever call himself Captain America. He never introduced himself as Captain America. He always introduced himself as Steve Rogers. That was who he was. He was Steve Rogers first and Captain America second. And every single time John Walker introduced himself in this TV series, he introduced himself as Captain America. He didn't. Yeah. So, and that was some of the differences between them. And then you have Falcon and Bucky going after the Flag Smashers, and they're not too keen on with John Walker. Yeah, so they're all, and they're not even too keen on each other. No. And then they introduce, and then to get help, and then you realize that there's the super soldier serum is back out, and they have to figure out who need. So then, where it came from, how many people have it, and it probably came from Hydra. So you go to the Hydra expert, which was Baron Zemo. Yes. And then you have Baron Zemo come out, and then they have to go to Madripoor. And Madripoor was big in the X-Men universe. Yeah, Madripoor is definitely kind of MCU-wise one of the first big name drops we've gotten as far as a place that is heavily intertwined in mutant history. Yes. Madripoor was definitely kind of a mutant safe haven in the comic books. Right. And a kind of a grimy underworld. And then when they go there, they're trying to find the power broker, or they're trying to who's controlling Carly Morgenthau at the same time, who gave them the super soldier serum. And they run into Sharon Carter, Agent 13, who helped out Bucky and Captain America in Civil War. She was the agent in charge of keeping Captain America safe in somebody. Yeah, she's the niece of of Peggy Carter. She's the niece of Peggy Carter, and which only gets more weird the more you think about it. The fact that her and Steve Rogers kissed after going back, the more you think about it, the weirder it gets. So just don't think about it. Don't think about it because it's just like Leia and Luke kissing. Just don't think about it. Don't think about it. And so it was interesting because for the most part, most of the trailers leading up to this show had portrayed Baron Zemo as potentially one of the main antagonists. Right. And he really wasn't the bad guy. No, he was more kind of this unlikely ally. And somebody who you never quite knew where he was, what side he was playing on fully. He was always kind of just in this gray area in the middle, kind of always doing what Baron Zemo thought was best. Right. And I really liked his portrayal in this show because he really played into the Baron aspect of it, the kind of rich, can get away with whatever he wants kind of mentality. They reintroduced that in when he was first introduced to Civil War. He wasn't a Hydra agent, but he was very resourceful from Sokovia, and he wanted to break up the Avengers because he blamed the Avengers for killing his family. And in this, which I mean, to be fair, which is I mean, they did blow up an entire country, so which is the point. So I'm not justifying what he didn't do, but it's understandable. It's right. He's mad, and then he doesn't like super soldiers. So right now, his perspective is he wants to stamp out the rest of the super soldiers because they're too idealistic. And then the Avengers come, and that's where he's coming from. And then Sharon Carter
just to go back to her, she is very jaded because she didn't get pardoned like Sam, like Bucky. They got pardoned because they were Avengers. She just kind of was
she was still kind of the scapegoat almost.
So yeah, and then no one went back to her and like, oh, Sharon Carter, you got to save her. But no, she was this underground stolen art dealer in Madripoor, or that's what it seems.
Somebody who had definitely kind of picked up some shady business dealings.
Right. And it was very jaded after the fact with all superheroes and everything like that, because she was totally over Steve Rogers at this point.
Yeah. And so there's a long back and forth with trying to track down the Flag Smashers, this kind of headbutting between Bucky and Zemo and Falcon and John Walker and his team, and this kind of just back and forth, nobody really getting any headway. And then eventually John Walker interferes in Falcon trying to talk down Carly and trying to kind of convince her to give up. And that almost kind of pushes her over the edge of like, I can't trust anybody.
Right.
And so she goes on the run, tries to escape. She runs into Zemo, who starts destroying all of the rest of the super soldier serum vials that she had. And John Walker interferes, knocking Zemo out. Carly gets away, and John Walker finds one remaining super soldier serum vial. After some back and forth, talking to
his buddy Battlestar.
Yeah, his buddy Battlestar. Lamar, who, kind of almost looking for reassurance, like, hey, if you had the chance, would you take the serum?
And they're like, yeah, I would. It would save so many people's lives.
It's a moment where you're almost not sure if he's wanting Lamar to justify him or to talk him down. You almost don't know which one he's hoping for.
Right.
And so Lamar ends up kind of reassuring him, yeah, hey, I would do it. You're a great man. The soldier just makes you more of who you are. And so off screen, John takes the serum and goes wild and starts trying to take down the Flag Smashers.
Not so much wild. He's more like, he's more soldier. He
starts going more surgical. They kidnap Lamar, and so he starts kind of just trying to barrel through them to get to Lamar. A fight breaks out between between John Walker, the Flag Smashers, Bucky, and Sam, and chaos ensuing. One of them, I forget which, I think it was Carly, is about to blindside John, and Lamar kind of jumps in front of it and eats just a straight up super soldier punch to the chest, knocking him 3/4 of the way across the room into a pillar, blood immediately back of his head, out his nose, unmoving. And this pretty much sends John Walker off the deep end.
Right.
The Flag Smashers realizing, hey, we effed up, and they go on the run. John Walker chases one of them down, and in the middle of an open square with dozens of people watching on and video recording, brutally murders him with the Captain America shield. And in an almost The Boys TV show type of scene.
They're calling it his Homelander moment.
Yeah, very Homelander-esque moment.
But also very much in the same essence of the Black Lives Matter movement of someone of authority using his power
this show
to hurt people who's definitely been arrested and they've been commandeered.
Yeah, this show definitely is without a doubt actually the most politically charged MCU project to date.
Well, it's Captain America. That's what Captain America is.
Right, so exactly. And this show definitely, most of the other Captain America related projects have touched on different things in the real world, but never this directly.
Yeah, it was. So
this was very clearly a direct correlation to ongoing events and a direct kind of parallel, as if it were.
And then you later find out that there was remnants of the super soldier program still going on within the MCU during Vietnam.
Yeah.
And you find out that there was a Black Captain America
A black
who
super
was-
soldier who was being experimented on and sent on missions, and somebody who they didn't want anybody to know that they were still experimenting with the super soldier serum. And the rest of his squad got captured, and they were just going to bomb the prison that these people were being held in, and let there be no trace. And so he, against advice from his superiors, went out on his own, rescued his entire squadron, and came back. And instead of a thank you, he got put in prison for 30 years
and experimented on
even more.
Yeah.
And ultimately, his blood in that experimentation is where the new super soldier serum came from. That's where this new strand came from that was able to turn these other people into super soldiers, was from his blood.
So it gives Bucky another layer of Captain America.
Right. And it gives Sam this kind of...
Sorry, I said Bucky, I meant Sam.
Yeah, and it gives Sam this kind of... This is what could happen to a black man in America trying to be Captain America. It gives him almost this cautionary tale.
And then eventually they get the shield back from John. They
break his arm. Fantastic fight, by the way. That fight scene was fantastic.
There was a very yes, I do agree with that. They get it back. The Falcon suit's destroyed. Sam gives the Falcon suit to his buddy, and then all this too because Bucky is because Zemo's out. Guess who's on his tail? Everyone, the Dora Milaje from Wakanda. So
you could yeah. So
Dora Milaje are on their
they're trying to track down Zemo because Zemo killed their king
T'Chaka. In Civil War.
King T'Chaka in Civil War. And so they are pissed because Bucky let him out of prison.
Right.
And they're like, hey, we helped cure you of your Winter Soldier training, and you're going to turn around and release this guy who killed our king.
Right.
And so Bucky's trying to convince them, hey, this is all for greater good. We need him. Give me some time. And ultimately, when there was no more purpose for Zemo, Bucky had the choice to finish him off or turn him over. And Zemo had kind of resigned himself to the fact that he thought Bucky was going to kill him.
Right.
Almost in a very reminiscent way to the end of Civil War,
right,
when he thought Black Panther was going to kill him.
Right.
And both times they decided not to. And Bucky turned him over to the Dora Milaje, who took him to the Raft, which is the ocean prison that we saw in Civil War. And I think we saw it again in one other movie, but I don't remember which one. Infinity War? Did we see it briefly in Infinity War? I feel like
don't remember seeing it.
I felt like we saw it a second time, but I could be wrong. Regardless,
but then anyway, Sam asks for a favor. The Dora Milaje don't go into Wakanda for a while.
Yeah,
but he's
Bucky's like, I need one last favor.
One last favor, and I need you to make. And Sam's finally warming up. Like, I got to be the next Captain America. Yeah. So they show up. He shows up with a nice fancy suit, and becomes
probably the most comic book accurate MCU suit to date. Do you have did you happen to have a picture with a side-by-side comparison?
I do right now. Yes. So you can see there's a side. I have, for everyone that's watching us on YouTube, Facebook, there is a very comic accurate of Sam Wilson as
and for anybody who is not watching, anybody who's listening on podcast form, I highly recommend, if you have not seen that comparison, and you've only seen the show and you don't know what the comparison to the comic version is, go look it up, because it is so good. And it's one of those suits that you almost don't think that they're gonna, like, you're almost positive like no, they're gonna turn it right, they're gonna twist it in some way, but it is almost piece for piece.
Pretty piece for piece. It looks pretty darn accurate.
Yeah, it's pretty, and it doesn't look cheesy. It doesn't look like unrealistic.
No, it looks like
it's a very interesting thing too, because I don't know if you have a picture. Maybe we can even go back to that one with the blood on the shield of John Walker's Captain America suit.
It's very reminiscent of his U.S. agent. So they based that design off of the U.S. agent.
Right. But it's interesting because in the American flag, the white represents kind of purity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of that aspect. And in John Walker's Captain America suit, there is practically no white.
Right. And eventually everyone...
And most of Falcon's suit is white.
Right.
And so it's a nice contrast once again.
I actually didn't. I was trying to understand what they're trying to say about that, but I get that now that you're talking about that, Christian.
Yeah.
About the white and the purity.
Yeah. Because John Walker was not pure in the slightest. And as we see with Sam's speech, he is all purity. He is the epitome of what Steve Rogers stood for. So
just to kind of entail it to get to call it back to 30 minutes. At the end of it, the GRC, which is the big global initiative,
Global Repatriation Council.
They're trying to put everyone back where they belong. There's big votes coming up. Carly and the Flag Smashers are going to go kidnap them, kill them, whatever
they have to do.
Falcon, Bucky, come save the day. John Walker remakes the shield using his metals. They all come together.
Yep. John Walker has a moment of deciding between revenge and attempting to save people, and ultimately chooses to do the better thing and try to save people, giving up a chance to kill or catch Carly.
Right.
And we see a moment of probably one of the coolest MCU shots, in my opinion, of Sam by himself at first, and then jetpack and the two Red Wing jetpacks pushing a giant armored car off a ledge and stopping it from falling.
Right. It was a very heroic. I think they got Sam Wilson as Captain America. Perfect.
Yeah.
And I think when we go down to all of the reactions to all those point by points, let's break that down then. But just to keep it moving forward, then you find out there's a big showdown. There's a big fight. Carly Morgenthau is fighting the new Captain America, Sam Wilson, and then Sharon Carter's there because they asked for help.
Turns out to, which we can cover in a minute, turns out to basically nobody's surprised. She's the power broker. And at the end, she gets a full pardon.
Yeah,
she shoots and kills. Carly, and Sam makes a heroic speech, basically bitching out the GRC, telling them they need to get their act together, and all is well with the world for now. And then our post-credit teaser is of Sharon getting a full pardon and promising some sort of buyer on the phone, all sorts of government secrets. And we also are introduced to the Contessa, who also in comic book is known as Madam Hydra. Right. And she very possibly could be setting up the MCU's version of the Thunderbolts, possibly run by her.
Dark Avengers, but we'll get into that
Avengers,
later.
Yeah, either one of those are possible.
Yep. And but she sets up John Walker as
the U.S.
agent.
Yep.
And then Sam and Bucky go off on their separate ways. Everyone happy ending.
Zemo gets the final laugh from prison as his butler blows up all the remaining Flag Smashers.
So in theory, all the other super soldiers are dead.
Yep. The only two remaining would be U.S. agent and Bucky Barnes. As far as we know. So, and Isaiah Bradley, but Zemo doesn't know about him.
Right. Or in any case. So, but that's where we're at. So we want to welcome Caveman Alberto to the show. How you doing?
Hey there, guys. How's it going?
Welcome back. So let's get off. I would say I'm the wrong person to ask, but maybe, so a lot of it, this whole show revolved around was in essence to the Black Lives Movement. Sam people are looking himself as his race first and then a superhero.
It's played off in the first couple episodes almost as kind of a joke. with a little kid calling him, "Oh, that's Black Falcon."
Right.
And it's kind of started out as a joke, but then as the show gets on, they realize, no, this is a much more serious subject.
He can't.
And it ultimately becomes kind of the heart and soul of that drive to be Captain America.
Right. And he finds out Isaiah Bradley, and he finds out he's very bitter. And you also find out, you see Sam just trying to help his family out and trying to use like, hey, I'm the Falcon, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but
That's
we still
great,
can't get you that
yeah.
loan.
Right. And so while not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily say the show was necessarily following like the Black Lives Matter movement, because I don't think that's accurate.
No, I think it was an essence. I think
it was just more trying to showcase that struggle. I don't think it was trying to tie itself to that movement at all. I don't think they were trying to connect to a specific organization or movement or anything like that.
No.
I think they were more focusing just on that ideology and that struggle. And so I think they did a very good job of showcasing that without blatantly picking a side or joining a movement or, tying themselves to any one organization or anything like that. They showed pros and cons to everybody's viewpoint. They showed the struggle on all sides. And I think they did a really good job of keeping themselves kind of in this middle ground while still getting a good message across.
Alberto, what are your thoughts on what the show was driven on? About Sam becoming, trying to using his thing about his race first, and then trying to think, no, I'm going to be Captain America and be the face of, and this is what I'm going to look like everyone. This is what Captain America looks like now. He's not blonde hair, blue eyes. He is dark, dark skinned, looks like the everyman. What do you think, how they tied that in? Did they do a good job? They didn't do it justice. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was really good. I think probably maybe I could touch more up on it later on, but probably my favorite part of the show for sure was Sam Wilson's and Isaiah's relationship. All those real heart-to-heart moments, they have a lot of an impact. I mean, obviously I'm not African American, so I can't speak, from that point of perspective, but I can speak just as, as a colored person here in the United States. There are a lot of times that like achievements I feel like are washed over. There are a lot of moments when things are kind of glossed over whenever it comes to someone else's history that isn't normally, seen as like the American history. And that's I don't want to open up like a whole conversation about like race and all that kind of stuff, but I thought that they did a pretty good job at like addressing it without it being preachy, without it sounding like it was on a soapbox, and having like that little kind of like honest call out saying that like they erased me from history. And I'm like, that's kind of how it feels like a lot of times. I feel like I remember growing up and I learned a lot about white English American culture. And it wasn't until college when I decided to start taking elective classes, like in jazz class, the history of jazz. For the first time, I'm finally learning about African American culture. It wasn't until college when I decided to take this like world culture class when I finally started learning about Spanish culture. And yes, I understand I'm here in the United States and I'm going to learn a lot about like the United States culture, but it's not like Hispanics and Black people didn't exist for the last 900 years here on this land, So I think they did a really good job. It just reiterated, not being preachy, not being soapboxy, almost a reflective kind of conversation, and an honest one. Like as soon as he said like they erased me, that hurt a lot, and I almost cried during that very first time watching that conversation just unfold, because I don't know if it was the actor, I don't know if it's the way he delivered it, I don't know what it was. But altogether, man, you feel that is a punch to the gut. It really was. So
it felt very genuine.
Yeah.
It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel, like you said, preachy.
Yeah.
It felt like a genuine conversation between two individuals who were experiencing this struggle and were trying to figure out their place in all of it. And that moment where at the end where Isaiah gets his wish of remaining dead, essentially, and not being brought back to life, but Sam still finds a way to honor him and to have his memory be shown and to be not erased anymore by having that statue and the memorial to him in the Captain America Museum was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was so honest and so heartfelt.
I think the other hard thing to this show really had to tackle, and unfortunately, it had to really bear this weight. And I don't think it's any secret that at some point we're probably going to see in our time, we're going to end up seeing a live action Miles Morales. And
probably sooner rather than later.
Yes, and I think the cards are starting to get laid out, and it's going to happen at some point. At the same time, though, it's like that is going to be an uphill battle. For the last 20 years in movie cinema, a lot of people know Spider-Man, for example, just as Peter Parker, the white guy. A lot of people know Captain America just, as Steve Rogers. And I think it's even going to be a slightly uphill battle, despite the fact we only have Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds and then the very short fight in Snyder Cut. I think even some people might still have that same kind of reservation to be like, well, I thought that Green Lantern was a white guy. It's like, well, one of the most famous iterations was Hal Jordan, though. So, it doesn't have to be.
Right, yeah. You're looking at it and you say, arguably, the Green Lantern that the majority of people our age grew up with was the John Lantern animated Green Lantern in the animated Justice League series. And so I think, it is definitely... I think, and honestly, with your Miles Morales thought, I think the animated Into the Spider-Verse movie will help that transition tremendously because it brought that character to the forefront, and it brought him into. Most people probably didn't know who Miles Morales was before that, and especially now with that movie and then the Spider-Man Miles Morales PS5 game. I think the two of those coming out will really help people understand who Miles Morales is. And so when he shows up in a live action MCU movie, which wouldn't surprise me if he's either heavily teased or even a small background cameo in the upcoming Spider-Man movie, I don't think I do agree with what you're saying. Like it'll be a little bit of an uphill climb, but I think that'll help that a little bit.
Yeah, because I mean, like Captain America is such a huge hill to climb. And sorry, just to go back, Hal Jordan.
Good. Yeah.
My bad. Hal Jordan is also the white. Green Lantern.
Yeah. Hal Jordan's the one most people know.
Yeah. Most people know.
Yeah. So trying to see the John Lantern
and Kyle Rayner too. By the way, who was the '90s Green Lantern. So
I guess my question for you, Alberto, would be kind of just trying to spin here off. Would be, what were your expectations going into this series? Because we weren't able to get you on here for predictions, so obviously it's a little late for predictions. But what were your expectations going in?
My immediate one was that one of these two will become Captain America. There's comic stories with each of them hailing the name, and I was very curious to see which one they were going to go with. I was worried they were going to go with Bucky, and the only reason I say worried is because while I still like those storylines where he does hail that name, in the grand scheme of things, like MCU wise, he did kill people. He was a mercenary. It's almost like giving the name Captain America to someone like the Punisher.
Yeah.
And if they did that, I think MCU would have to that's gonna like shake up the really clean, bubbly PG-13 more like morals and stuff.
It would be like if I can't remember the character's name, but if Venom all of a sudden became Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like somebody who has been on the wrong side of a lot of battles.
Yes.
Suddenly becoming this paragon of goodness.
Now, while like my expectations about that was definitely met, because I was like, one of these guys have to hold the name at the end. My only other expectation was that I was hoping it was going to do a little bit more world building post blip. I was kind of hoping that they were gonna, because initially I read that this was going to be taking place right after WandaVision. So I was kind of curious if they were going to touch upon anything from WandaVision. Are they their own separate storyline? They're not even going to touch upon it. And A little bit to the disappointment. There wasn't too much attachment, but that's fine because I know these are the TV shows. This is when you could do almost like a character study on Sam Wilson and Bucky and really dive deep into them.
Well, I think the thing that hurt it in the sense of not being able to tie into WandaVision was the fact that this show was supposed to come out first.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Yes,
originally this show was supposed to come out first, and then when COVID hit, both shows got delayed. And what happened was because of all of the intense hand-to-hand combat and close-up fight scenes in this show, they couldn't find a way to film this COVID safely. So they were able to finish WandaVision because it's mostly CGI combat. Mm-hmm. And so if you notice in the WandaVision finale, everybody is either 6 feet apart, or if there's more than one person on the screen at the same time and they're not 6 feet apart, one of them is CGI.
Huh.
The only time when that's not the case is the scene in the bedroom with the kids. And even then, it's filmed in such a way that they could easily have just put two scenes together. Otherwise, it's Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, which Paul Bettany is 90% CGI. And in that case, you can have two actors isolate themselves. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. For protection. Whereas this show, they have a ton of people fighting, a ton of stunt doubles you have to get. You have to get the actors yourselves. So they couldn't figure out a way to finish this show with all the COVID precautions. So they were able to finish WandaVision, and they got that one out first.
Wow.
And so they supposedly one of the main reasons why the Doctor Strange cameo was cut from WandaVision was because of that speeding up they had to do. Mm. That they didn't have time to finish all of the CGI for his scene.
But and honestly, I think if I was the head of MCU and I was making $6 billion a minute, and like I was given the choice of like one of these are gonna get the short end of the stick. Dare I say I'm a little glad that WandaVision, just because I feel that WandaVision was more of like an internal commentary. On just a lot of like internal stuff between people.
This got the short end of the stick too. There was a couple things that
there was a major subplot that had to get cut from this show.
Which
was
so the entire subplot revolving around the refugee camp and Mama Donya was supposed to be about this pandemic that had broken out in all these refugee camps. And the government was not giving out vaccines to these refugees. They were saving the vaccines for all the people who had been blipped. And so that warehouse that she attacks and kills all the people inside was a vaccine warehouse. They steal. It's mentioned briefly in the second episode. The truck that they're stealing is full of vaccines. It's mentioned very briefly, and it's never mentioned again. And so what happens is this pandemic and this virus is what kills Mama Donya because she couldn't get a vaccine. And so that's what then drives Carly over the edge to killing these individuals because they didn't give vaccines out to these people in the refugee camps. And so ultimately they cut this entire subplot from the show because they felt it hit too close to home during everything that's happening.
Would have been
it would have made so much more sense.
Yeah.
It would have made her as a character make so much more sense and not just feel like this
anarchist,
right? It would have given her an actual purpose other than just we want our houses back. Like
that's kind of a bummer. That's a huge bummer. Mine and Ariella at the end of every episode, we waited every Saturday to watch it, and our commentary every time was, "I don't like Carly. I don't like Carly. It's like maybe they're trying to make her more of a Killmonger kind of character to sympathize with, and I just can't connect with her." And the way they even ended, we'll touch up on that later too. It's such a disappointment. And this makes a lot of sense. It looks like there was supposed to be a whole lot more meat to this character. There's supposed to be a whole lot more to actually dive into. That is such a bummer. Was the show supposed to be like 7 episodes then? Like probably
supposedly when it was originally greenlit, they were greenlit for 8 to 10 episodes. Originally, and then they had to cut out about an entire episode and a half worth of subplot and condense it all.
That makes a lot of sense.
So supposedly what I had heard was that it was going to be 8 episodes, similar to WandaVision, and they had to basically cut about an episode and a half out of subplot of trying to track down, what they were doing with these vaccines and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so that's why that whole kind of subplot felt very out of place and very rushed, because 90% of it didn't exist anymore. And I do think it is a shame, because I think this actress's performance as Carly was really good,
It would have made,
but her character just didn't make any sense.
No, it would have made everything better. And I think I thought what suffered was they told you about everyone suffering. They said people are suffering all over the world. You never saw it, so you don't connect with it. You have to catch it in like the caption. So I think that's where this ultimately suffers, where you want to care for Carly. You want to care for her cause.
Yeah.
You want to be sympathetic. You want her to be a Killmonger type person. Like, okay,
I would have loved
who's
a half
actually
an episode.
right?
I would have loved a half an episode worth, or even an entire episode worth, of when these individuals met, and show me what brought them all together and caused them to start this movement. Show me that during that time frame of everybody coming back and everybody being forced out of these homes that they've lived in for the last 5 years. Show me that. Don't just tell me it. Show it.
That would have been a lot. That would have made the series much. I think it would have made the series stronger.
It would have made it. It would have just made it a more cohesive story for all of the characters. Because I think your main two characters in Bucky and Sam both had fantastic full circle story arcs in this show.
I agree.
But
I do agree
character
with that.
outside of them kind of suffered a little bit.
Mhm.
Every character outside of them had kind of half-assed arc. Like, for the first 5 episodes, John Walker's arc is fantastic. And then episode 6, they give us a half-assed, rushed redemption arc.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's just good to go. Like, they tell him he's, barely escaping prison, and all of a sudden he shows back up again in a homemade Captain America suit and shield, fighting crime. And nothing happens. He's cool to just go off and become the U.S. agent with the Contessa.
What about the Sokovia Accords? Right.
Right.
I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah. There was a lot of aspects that I feel like definitely were rushed and half-assed in the show. How much of that is due to COVID? Who knows?
Who knows? I was really disappointed. You had Rhodey in episode 1, and you didn't call him for backup in episode 6.
Well, I mean, also to be fair. You're downtown Manhattan. There's a massive fight going on and people are being kidnapped. Spider-Man's not swinging by.
Right. Well, again, that too. So you have all this massive.
But to be fair, though, that's the problem with creating this massive universe with all these heroes in it, is unless every fight is happening in some podunk small town in the middle of nowhere, you're going to wonder why people aren't showing up. This is 2 times now. Why wasn't Doctor Strange involved? Massive magical nonsense and massive fight happening 2 blocks from his house, and he doesn't get involved either time. Like, so that's one of the problems you're going to run into when you're dealing with all of these superheroes and all of these expanding people and all these worlds intertwining. Is eventually you're going to run into circumstances where somebody should show up and they don't, because you can't afford them.
Right, and who knows? Maybe they couldn't get Rhodey in. They couldn't get him back in time for the set. They had to cut
because
out,
I don't
whatever.
know. As far as my understanding goes, they only had to do the last episode. Like, they had the first 5 episodes done before COVID hit, was my understanding.
Okay.
So they only had to film that final episode. I could be completely wrong, but that's just going off of what I remember seeing somewhere over the last 6 months or so. But so I do have it written down here, and I think we should, for our own accountability's sake, Bobby.
Yes.
During our WandaVision episode, we made some predictions.
Yes.
We did not do so great.
No, we did not.
We are arguably 0 for 4.
Really?
Yes. So Bobby's two predictions were that there would be some pretty significant WandaVision reference in the show.
Wrong.
And that Falcon would get injected either willingly or unwillingly with super soldier serum.
I was wrong on that one.
My 2 predictions were that it would be a team Captain America. It would no longer be a solo person, but it would be kind of a team ideology. Dead wrong.
How wrong
were
you?
Super wrong.
Super wrong.
And because, well, to be fair, my second prediction, I was misled because all of the trailers made it seem like Zemo was the antagonist of the series.
I agree.
And so my other prediction was that Zemo was being puppeted by either General Ross or some other military figure to kind of control all of this stuff, which obviously I was dead wrong because he wasn't even a bad guy, really.
He wasn't. No, he was actually sympathetic, and he made sense.
Yeah, he made a lot of sense.
He was likable, and people made a meme out of him. Disney made a 1-hour video of him dancing in a nightclub. So he was a pretty popular guy.
Disney gave us the Zemo cut in 8 hours when it took 4 years to get the Snyder cut.
And now they're try to release the Snyder universe. But let's save that for another.
We already talked about that a couple weeks ago.
We're going to talk about that later. But
so we didn't do too hot in our predictions, Bob.
No,
but that's okay. You know what?
Okay.
It's okay. So I would be interested. Scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Overall show rating.
No, man. That's tough. If you asked me as soon as I wrapped up episode 5, 8.5.
Yeah.
That was
after episode 6.
After episode 5, my God, I couldn't wait to finish watching it. After episode 6, I don't know. I just felt kind of like, So I don't know, maybe 7 at the most.
Yeah,
and that's being generous too.
Yeah, I would say episode 4, right after, blood on the shield.
Oh yeah,
10 for me. Like, so hyped, waiting to see where it goes. Episode 5, about an 8, and then I would agree with you. I think after episode 6, I'm right about a 7, 6.5, 7. I think there was a lot of arcs that didn't fully completed, a lot of stuff that was rushed. You had the shocking reveal that Sharon Carter was the power broker. I think it was only shocking for people who only turned on the episode 6 and hadn't watched any of the other episodes.
Right.
Because literally, I was so sure that they were trying to fake us out. Because the second she appeared, she's shady. She's dealing art. She's talking to mysterious people. She's doing all of this stuff. And they're like, oh, who's this power broker? Who's this power broker? And you're just like, it's probably her. Because especially when you get to the end of episode 5 and they still haven't revealed who the power broker is, you go, okay, it's somebody we know. It's the same thing like WandaVision. At end of episode 7, no Mephisto. You're like, okay, they're not going to show up Mephisto at the end of one episode remaining. They're not going to introduce a new character as the power broker with 1 episode remaining. So at that point, there's such limited options. So I think that was a very underwhelming reveal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I was in the same boat with you, though. I think I psyched myself out because I was like, they're not going to do that easy of an answer. So oddly enough, I was surprised, not because I was like, I didn't see that coming. I was like, oh, so they went that route.
Yeah, right. You were surprised that they were so obvious with it.
Yeah.
100%.
She does have a history in the comics. So in the comic books, she did shoot Captain America.
It's not unheard of. It's just a little disappointing.
They could have done. There is the mysterious person on the phone that she was talking to.
I don't think that's the thing. I think this is another situation where everybody's trying to say, oh, who is that? Who's she talking on the phone? Is that Justin Hammer? No, it's just one of her lackeys.
It probably
she was literally telling them, line up our buyers. It was just somebody that works for her.
Most likely.
If it was somebody that was supposed to be important, they would have teased it more. You know what I mean? She would have said like, okay, I'll see you soon. Or like, let's meet up or something. You know what I mean? They would have teased that this is going to be somebody that's going to show up. But it was literally just her talking to somebody, giving them constructions.
Let's talk about some of the more positive things. I think, can we all agree, or maybe can I hope to agree, what about the Wakandans? The Dora Milaje, them showing up, them showing Bucky's recovery scene in Wakanda.
So good. Sebastian Stan deserves an Emmy for that one scene alone.
So
the emotions that we saw on his face in that one scene.
So in the scene, what they're talking about is they're sitting, this is before pre-Infinity War. You have Ayo. Am I saying her name right?
Ayo, I believe.
Ayo. They're sitting in a hut. He doesn't have his arm yet. and she's using the code words to activate the Winter Soldier program. And they're talking, and every word he's just like scared, and all of a sudden she says the last word, and he's not doing anything, and he starts crying.
Tears. Yeah.
So that I think was really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think the Dora Milaje coming in after Zemo made the most sense.
100%.
I thought that was done perfectly. I thought their whole arc was well, and I liked how Bucky just didn't show up with a Captain America suit. They tied that in.
Yeah, right, exactly. It wasn't just a where did Sam get such a cool suit?
Right.
There was reasoning for it.
Like, oh, they had this. He had this in backup, or what happened?
And I think it goes to show one of two things: A, how badass Shuri is that she was able to design that suit so quickly.
Yep.
And B, she was probably working on it for a while.
Did they build a fail? So in the show, during a fight between the Dora Milaje, John Walker, Bucky and Sam, they get into a fight and they take off Bucky's arm.
She disarms him.
So disarms him. Now, was that a fail safe so they don't use the arm against him? Or was that like just a function because, look, it's an arm. There has to be a way to take it off to maintenance it. They just used it to their advantage.
I would say kind of somewhere in the middle. Like, obviously, there's a way the arm comes off. I'm sure Shuri's had to upgrade it. I'm sure, like, they've done things on it. So I'm sure there was a way for it to come off.
Well, they said did you know they could do that? No.
Right.
And then he does the whole arm thing like he does in Winter Soldier.
Right. So, yeah. So I think he knew that the arm could come off. I just don't think he realized that there was like a secret combination of pressure points that would make it pop off.
Right.
And so I don't necessarily know whether that was a fail safe, like in case he turned, but I think it might have been a like, this is how to get it off of him quickly if we need to.
Right. I mean, so the games say, do you think the Wakandans have a fail safe in the Falcon suit or in the Captain America suit?
I don't think so, because he is a different symbol. There's no fear of him turning.
Alberto, what's your take? Is there a fail safe in the new Captain America suit? So he doesn't go against the Wakandans.
I don't know. I want to say no, only just because I feel like they did it against Bucky, because with Bucky, it's almost like, well, we don't know if he'll ever turn back into the Winter Soldier, so maybe this is a failsafe because we have to. Whereas Sam Wilson is such a Boy Scout about stuff, closest thing to a Boy Scout, really, and I wouldn't have to worry. But to answer your question, I would say yes. But even if they did, I don't think we'll ever really see it, because I don't see a moment where Sam's gonna, turn against like that. At least just based off how they write the character so far.
Okay. Let's just keep on going through some of these other things. What do you think about them bringing back super soldiers? Do you think it's like, was it too obvious, or did you think this was like a natural progression into the show revolving around the super soldier serum?
I think it was a very nice point to introduce a non-super soldier Captain America. Okay. By showing this struggle against super soldiers and surrounded by super soldiers.
That you can still be a superhero.
You have Sam Wilson being, by the end of the show, the only normal guy in the room. He's got super soldier Bucky on his side. He's got super soldier John Walker kind of in between. And he's got this army of super soldiers that he's fighting against. And he's just a guy. Which ultimately, even though he was a super soldier, is what Steve Rogers stood for. Was being just a guy willing to stand up for what he believed in. And I think this is kind of jumping all over the place, but I think one of my favorite subtle moments in the show was when they were in the back of the truck talking to John Walker after
they got their butts. So this is episode 2.
Episode 2, after they get their butts kicked, realizing they're all super soldiers. They all get their butts kicked. That they drive off with the trucks full of vaccines, and Sam and Bucky are walking back to civilization. And John Walker and Battlestar pull up to introduce themselves for the first time. They pull up in the truck. Hey, get in. We'll give you a ride back. They're introducing themselves. They're talking, and obviously Sam and Bucky don't want anything to do with him. He's not their Cap. He stands against everything that they believe Steve Rogers.
Well, they don't know that. They just know.
But in their minds, he's a government pawn. Bucky is very against him, and Sam's kind of just didn't care one or the other.
Bucky's mad at him because he felt that Cap was if Sam thought he wasn't the right fit,
right,
then he's doubting himself that Steve Rogers was wrong about him. So that was a double-edged sword.
Right, exactly. So one of my favorite lines, which is so subtle and so quick, was when Bucky asked him if he's ever jumped on a grenade. And John Walker's like, yeah, I've done it like 7 times. And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, my helmet is concussion proof. And so I put it on top of the grenade and it doesn't explode. And you immediately think back to scrawny 50-pound Steve Rogers, convinced he's about to explode to death in Captain America: The First Avenger, diving on a grenade. Yeah. No protection, no helmet, no nothing, just diving on a grenade that he thinks is about to blow up a bunch of other people. And so they're asking him, oh, would you ever jump on a grenade? And he's like, well, yeah, I have a helmet that'll stop it. Like, duh. And that is an immediate dividing line showing the difference between the two of them. And I thought that was such a fantastic line and such a fantastic, subtle kind of show of what type of person he was.
Yeah.
So with being just kind of going a little bit over a little bit of everything, what do you guys thought about the soundtrack overall?
I think this is probably more Alberto's wheelhouse than mine. I'm definitely not a. I don't really notice the soundtrack too much. I feel like in most parts, like unless it's something very blatantly obvious, like twisting a song that's very popular into another purpose. I don't really notice it too much. There
was a lot of callbacks into the Winter Soldier, into Civil War.
Yeah.
But just overall, they also had a very Bayou patriotic theme song, which again, you can find this on iTunes. I subscribe to Apple Music. Alberto, since the music is more your wheelhouse, any comments about the soundtrack? Or the background music that was used in the Winter Soldier, in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
This is gonna sound kind of rude. So I am a musician, but I'm definitely not a classical musician. This would be more 100% in the realm of my girlfriend, who's played classical music for like 20 years. So to her, that's 100% her.
If she listens, I know she listens to the podcast. So if you have any, Aria, right?
Drop a comment.
Ariella, drop a comment so we can see your
point of
view on the music, or anyone. Please do that. So I'm sorry, but go ahead, Alberto. You were saying, did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you? Any thoughts on that?
I will say this, and hopefully it doesn't offend anyone. And no offense to the composer, and this is again why I'm not very equipped to answer this question, but I thought the music was serviceable, and I thought it did its job. It set moods when it needed to set the mood, and that's it. But there's something about my favorite example always when it comes to music, like soundtracks, at least as of recent. We just talked about the movie earlier, Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
you hear if you hear just 10 seconds of just the soundtrack of Miles jumping or someone fighting or something, or
it's instantly recognizable.
Oh my god, like the Prowler showing up, and just the way that they distort this noise on the guitar or whatever it is, it was and it just sounds so eerie, almost like a Prometheus kind of feel. That I think is such a memorable soundtrack. It fits the entire aesthetic, the entire theme, the setting, everything. This one felt to me very MCU. It felt very safe. Nothing stood out. Nothing made me think that this is it. This is a blank soundtrack for Falcon and Winter Soldier. Nothing stood out to me like that. So I thought it was all right.
I can't point out like a scene or anything where I was like, oh, this soundtrack's fantastic. Like
unless though, Bobby did bring up a point. Now, while their orchestra's original soundtrack, maybe it didn't have any shining moments like Into the Spider-Verse. Yes, for sure, their licensed soundtrack, especially during like those buddy moments when they're fixing the boat and whatnot, it really reminded me. I was like, oh, I am in the South, and they did such a good job of like showing like the boats and the water and just those really long willow weeping trees just all over. And you can almost feel like the humidity too, and just kind of like that blues music, and even the way they even ended the entire show, they had kind of like a more like upbeat blues song playing as well.
Do you think they did a good job of the camaraderie between Bucky and Sam? Like, do you think that dialogue? Do you think the interaction? Because that was one of the things when I saw Civil War and I saw them sitting in the back of the car saying, "Can you move your seat?" No.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, and they were fighting against Spider-Man. You know, like, oh, you could have done that earlier.
The second that movie came out, I was like, give me a buddy cop movie between the two of these.
I want this now.
Yeah.
I want this right now. So, and this is one of the reasons, as soon as I knew Disney Plus was making this, I'm like, Disney Plus, give me my money. I want to see these two interact for an hour and a half or more.
Yeah.
Do you think the series did them justice?
Yeah.
100%.
I think so. I've been wanting to see something with those two together for a while. I'm so glad that the show existed for that very reason. That buddy chemistry that these two have, I think off screen and offset, I think they share that probably. And if they don't, they're really good at faking.
No, they 100% do. If for you and anybody listening, I highly recommend going and watching interview clips of the two of them, and especially interview and like Q&A clips between them and Tom Holland, who plays Peter Parker, because the three of them together are hilarious. They play off each other so well. They troll each other so much. It's fantastic.
It's too bad they couldn't call in Tom Holland for this. I think. And Ari, thank you for your comment. She said the soundtrack wasn't very memorable for me, honestly. Like it served its purpose for the show, but nothing stood out for me in particular.
I think pretty that seems like it's pretty unanimous across the board for most of us.
I enjoyed the aesthetic. I loved the buddy. I loved how they put Sam, interacting with his sister, Bucky flirting with his sister, and Sam's like, "Don't flirt with my sister."
Which interesting note. Do you? I don't know. You might know this. You might not know this. I think yes, he was 100% flirting with his sister. But you want to know what make that scene even a little bit more special?
Go, Kristen.
Is that Sam's sister? Her name is Sarah, and that is the same as Steve Rogers' mother's name. His mother was named Sarah as well. And so in Civil War, when Cap is asking him which Bucky he's talking to, that's what he says to him. Your mother's name is Sarah. Like that's what he says to him to get him to know that he is who he says he is. And so I think that yes, he 100% was flirting with his sister because he wants to fuck with Sam. But it was also this moment of like almost a kind of what a coincidence, kind of like Steve Rogers, his mother was named Sarah. He was Captain America. Now Sam is he should be Captain America. His sister is named Sarah. Like almost that kind of just the circle continues.
And I like the training scene where I liked how Sam was using throughout the whole show when he was trying to console Carly, when he was trying to console John, he was trying to console Bucky. He was using his veteran affairs training and being empathetic. And he's like, look, you got Steve's book. And he's like, I've been amending. You haven't been amending. You've been avenging the people that have wronged you. You have to help people for you to truly start making amends. And I thought that shield wielding thing, the shield, when they're both throwing the shield, I thought that was very them. And at the end, you can definitely see like them making
that connection.
More serious those connections.
Yeah. Which also that's the training montage for Sam. Fantastic. So good.
They did a good
and also his nephews calling him Uncle Sam. very on the nose. I loved that.
Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Did you think Baron Zemo was right about super soldiers? That super soldiers, their arrogance leads to ultimately the downfall of society. That's what led to Nazis. That's what led to the Avengers. Do you think Zemo was right? What are your opinions on that?
Yes and no. I think it's the people who create the super soldiers. Because more often than not, the people who create the super soldiers are picking people that fit what they want. We've seen, obviously, with Steve Rogers, with Isaiah Bradley, with Bucky outside of being the Winter Soldier, we've seen people who have the super soldier serum and can be good people and do good things with it. But primarily, most of the time when people have been turned into super soldiers, it's at the behest of the government or at the behest of people who want to do powerful, controlling things with these super soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Zemo's view is very isolated. His view comes from a very focused position of betrayal and revenge. I mean, he even says that Steve Rogers is the exception to the rule. He said there's never been another Steve Rogers.
That's exactly
Well,
what
he
I was gonna
says
point
to,
out,
he
yeah.
almost says like touche.
Yeah, like because he says he's like all super soldiers are inherently what's the word he used? Not dictators, supremacists.
Supremacists, yeah.
And they said, well, Steve wasn't, and he says, well, fair, but there's never been another Steve Rogers.
Mhm.
Also, can we just address real quick while you've got this picture up? What was in the TV show world? What was the point of the mask?
I was going to say the same thing. I don't know.
Other than the tip of the cap nod to the comic books and to the fans. Hey, look, he's got the purple mask. What was the point?
Well, here is the point. Everyone had to wear a mask. All the stunt people had to wear a mask, so you didn't see it was someone else while they were doing all the stunt fight scenes. So that was one of the reasons. So there's a practical reason why you always have the stunt coordinators. They put on the flag smasher masks,
Right.
So they could fight the other stunt people.
But
so
I mean, he didn't even really do any stunts. He shot a grenade launcher. That was the only time he had the mask on.
Yeah, I agree. It was just kind of. It didn't need it. He didn't need it in Civil War.
Yeah, I guess if anything, it's just to set the scene for it showing back up when he eventually becomes part of the Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers, whatever you want to call it.
If we want to go back into, if we want to kind of shoot into our predictions into the future, I was going to go into a little bit more into the podcast, but let's say that for a little bit later.
Yeah, we can save predictions for the end.
Let's save it for a little bit more towards the end because I know we're getting towards the end. I want just a couple more points.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think was Bucky a weaker fighter now that he's not brainwashed anymore? Was his fighting style tied to his programming? Was it tied to his lack of empathy? And now that he has empathy, he holds back? Because untrained super soldier, do you think a trained super soldier with years of experience would have done better against untrained super soldiers? Now we don't know their full backstory.
But I mean, arguably, they're refugees. They're not trained assassins.
They're not trained assassins. I mean, I know. And Bucky said he says he got his butt kicked by Isaiah Bradley. He got his butt kicked by the other super soldiers in Winter Soldier, who are those top trained people.
I think definitely there is an element of a disconnect there between the ruthlessness. And Alberto, you go ahead and comment whatever you have to say, because I do have a point that I wanted to make, but you go ahead and go first.
About which one exactly? Though?
Just what your thoughts are. Do you think Bucky is a weaker fighter, or holding back more, or subdued a little bit compared to the Winter Soldier?
So when they were fighting in their hotel room, right then and there, I was like, I feel like if this was Winter Soldier Bucky, he still would have been able to take out everyone in that room, probably without even batting an eye.
Yeah.
There was a lot of carelessness in his original fighting when he first presented him in the MCU. He was definitely a lot less or a lot more ruthless. And I remember even like the way that Winter Soldier ended, like he still, basically made him and Steve Rogers fall how many feet all the way straight into water, which is basically cement. Like that is a level of carelessness that only came because of just this really hardcore training and brainwash that he was under. So to answer your question though, yeah, I did feel like he was a little bit of a weaker fighter. Maybe not weaker, but he's a lot much more of a reserved fighter for sure.
Yeah, a more cautious fighter.
Yeah, for sure. Like you can see that 100% just the way that he fought. Now he's fighting almost a little bit more like a brawler, if anything. Making sure that like you can tell by the way that they choreographed his fights. Now his fights are just clearly showing. I just am trying to knock you out. I'm only trying to knock you out, and that's it. Whereas like again, when long-haired Bucky was around, it was like I need to either break 6 bones right now in this scene, or you have to die. You get one or the other,
or both.
Or both. But you don't get out scot-free.
Right.
So,
yeah. Following off of that too, there's a line which is almost a throwaway line, but where he says, Sam asks him when he's twisting the wrench, and he's like, "Why didn't you use the metal arm?"
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Well, I'm right-handed. I don't always think to use the metal arm." And if you go back and look, even in the series, anytime he's catching something, punching something, it's with the right arm. Even at the very end, when Carly throws the spear at him, it's right hand. He catches it. Whereas when the Winter Soldier is fighting, everything is metal arm. He catches the shield with the metal arm.
That's true.
Shoots with the metal arm. He chokes with the metal arm. He punches. Everything is metal arm because it's the stronger arm. So the Winter Soldier is all about like you said, what's doing the most damage, what breaks the most bones, what kills the most people. Bucky is, I'm right-handed. That's easier.
Well, I think about I'm a human first. I think that's the other point. Like I think of myself as a human, not as a programmed robot.
Right.
So
exactly.
And I think that was one of the things that really tried to set up. And then let's just talk about the MCU predictions. What is this setting?
Quick, Bobby, real quick.
Sure.
Because I think this ties into this Bucky conversation.
Sure.
The end, very end, final episode, when that credit pops up.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier to Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
A lot of people online, a lot of people are wondering why that didn't turn to Captain America and the White Wolf or Captain America and Bucky Barnes. Why is he still being referred to as the Winter Soldier, even after everything he went through in this series, to distance himself from that and amend those crimes?
The White Wolf in MCU terms was just a nickname the kids gave to him, and it was kind of like a.
But even AO calls him that.
I think it's more of a nickname than anything.
Yeah.
In the comic books, the White Wolf is the chief of security in Wakanda.
Right.
In the MCU, it's a nickname they gave to Bucky. As like something cute, like the White Wolf. Is
but
type of thing.
So why though? Because they make the distinction of changing Sam from the Falcon to Captain America. He's gone through this metamorphosis, and as far as we're all concerned, Bucky's gone through a metamorphosis as well. So do you think this is a sign of he's not done changing?
No, I think it's a sign of branding.
Or is a sign of he's learned to accept that that's who he is. Or is it something not even as deep as that, and it's literally just as simple as he's known as the Winter Soldier, so that's what he's going to be called.
That's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything more than everyone knows him as the Winter Soldier. Yeah. Like in the show, there's the throwaway line where the people saying Sergeant Barnes.
Yeah.
So people are calling him Sergeant Barnes, Bucky, James. So he's human, but like he's the Winter Soldier. That's how people know him. That's how he's branded to us. And that's how you're going to. So it's not going to be called the Captain America and Bucky show. It's much more flashier from a marketing standpoint to call it Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
So,
Alberto, what do you think?
My guess, and I guess like when I saw that, it was more of like I feel like that's their way of saying that Bucky's story isn't done.
Yeah.
That's the way I saw it. I saw that Sam's was definitely came to a conclusion, and while Bucky's kind of wrapped up, I mean, obviously he left his book at the therapist's office.
Which was Steve's book.
Yeah.
Which was Steve's book, by the way, which I like that. I like that tie-in.
Yeah.
And they were having all those conversations and whatnot. At the very end, I still don't think that's the last time that we're gonna get to dive a little deeper into Bucky. I think at some point they'll probably start just calling him something else. Maybe White Wolf. Who knows?
I think they've mentioned the White Wolf name enough in this show that it would make sense if that's what his name goes to. I don't think they would have mentioned it nearly as many times as they did if that wasn't their intentions to eventually switch him to that. And now with the announcement of the Captain America 4 movie coming,
it's in the story with the current story writers.
Right, with the writers from this TV show, I would be incredibly surprised if it's not basically almost a direct sequel to this and doesn't also have Bucky Barnes in it. Especially because, I mean, arguably, Captain America without Bucky Barnes is almost like Batman without Robin as far as MCU goes. Yeah. Every Captain America movie has heavily revolved around Bucky Barnes.
Or his love of Bucky Barnes.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got the first movie, which revolves around Bucky Barnes and his death. You've got Winter Soldier, which revolves around him coming back to life as Winter Soldier. And you've got Civil War, which revolves around them fighting for him and trying to protect him and clear his name. All three major Captain America movies heavily feature Bucky Barnes.
Yeah.
And so to think that Captain America 4 is going to suddenly change that formula, especially after we have Captain America and the Winter Soldier at the end of this TV series, I think that doesn't make any sense. So I'm hoping that that's kind of where we're going to go, is that this next Captain America movie will fully kind of complete that transformation. But we'll see.
Well, and also at the same time, too, they're not calling this a mini series like WandaVision. They submitted
that to the Emmys as a mini series.
MCU. So Marvel submitted WandaVision as the mini series. So WandaVision was a one and done series,
which makes sense.
I don't want a season 2 of that.
No. And then Kevin Feige came out and said he thinks it's very likely that we could get another season of this show, as well as
of
Loki,
Captain America.
and Hawkeye. He said most of the other shows that are coming, he could see more than one season of. He said WandaVision was kind of a one and done thing.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Although if we're getting a new Captain America movie, we might not get a second season.
It all depends on how everything's flowing. There's a lot going on within. So let's talk about the future.
Yeah.
What things they were hinting at in the show. So the first off I want to talk about is, so they talked about Captain 4, and we've talked a lot about Zemo leading into the Thunderbolts. So
Thunderbolts, Dark Avengers, whatever version of it they want to go with.
So why don't Christian, why don't you talk about what are the Thunderbolts? What are Dark Avengers?
Thunderbolts are essentially the MCU Suicide Squad. That's basically the easiest way to describe them. General Ross, aka Thunderbolt Ross, who we've seen heavily featured in the MCU so far and heavily featured in Civil War, it recruits a bunch of these supervillains who are in the raft. And he recruits them to do what the good guys won't, basically, to run these secret underground missions and to get him more power, basically. They are definitely not as much of a anti-hero mentality as the Suicide Squad. They're more of a kind of definitely darker team. They are definitely more villainous in their mentalities, but they definitely have that set up pretty clearly, I think.
And the original Thunderbolts idea was Baron Zemo pretending he was a superhero and taking a bunch of other supervillains pretending they were superheroes when there was a superhero vacuum in the universe, in the comic books. So you have precedent in the comic books of Baron Zemo leading a group of superheroes for ulterior motives. So that's definite on Baron Zemo getting a bunch of super villains, whether it's called the Thunderbolts, because Thunderbolt Ross is heavily featured in Black Widow, or Dark, whatever you call it, we can definitely see Baron Zemo coming into the future.
Yeah, you got Baron Zemo set up for that. You know, the potential. So also, you've got the possibility that it might not even be led by General Ross, and it could be being led by the Contessa instead.
The Contessa, which was Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character, who got John Walker, the U.S. agent costume.
Originally was supposed to debut in the Black Widow film. But that film got pushed. So we're not sure if she's still going to appear in that film or if they cut her scene from that and having her debut in this instead. But her first appearance was supposed to be in the Black Widow film. And
in the comic books, she was an ex-Shield agent who becomes a Hydra agent.
Yeah, she becomes Madam Hydra, who is the leader of Hydra and eventually leads a similar team to the Thunderbolts as well.
So there's a lot of, so you can see maybe U.S. agent who's very much, who's more of a darker hero being part of this dark Avengers.
Yeah, you could see, honestly, they have a handful already. You have U.S. agent, you've got Zemo. This could be an easy return of Abomination.
Right. Because
from the Incredible Hulk movie.
And he is scheduled to be in She-Hulk. In the She-Hulk TV show.
Which would make a ton of sense. And
you haven't heard of Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Right,
so
Ghost. Ghost could easily show up. Agatha Harkness could pop back up. There's a number of, I hate to say B-tier villains, but a number of villains who are not going to pop back up as the main villain in a movie anytime soon. Who they could easily loop around to keep them involved and keep this universe expanding outwards. And I think a lot of that will depend on how well this new Suicide Squad movie does.
Yes.
If this does well and then Marvel sees, oh, hey, look, there's a demand for this, then maybe they do a full-fledged movie out of it. Otherwise, if it doesn't do so well, maybe they just do it as a Disney Plus show.
Well, again, I still firmly believe that they're going to start phasing out the movies and moving everything to Disney Plus.
I don't think they'll ever phase out the movies because it makes them way too much money.
Again, time is going to tell.
Yeah, unless the movie theater business starts to severely decline. But yeah, I think, I don't know. But I think and maybe if you have a different point that you want to get to next as far as predictions go.
I was going to keep on predictions, what they're just setting up. I was going
to say Young Avengers.
Young Avengers. So they introduced Patriot, which was Isaiah Bradley's son.
Yeah. And grandson. Eli Bradley.
Eli Bradley. And he is Patriot to the Young Avengers. And they set up Young Avengers. The twins are part of the Young Avengers. They have Hawkeye. They're setting up, I'm forgetting her name.
Yeah.
So it's
a definite. No, that's the daughter in Ant-Man.
But again, she got recasted in the new.
So you've got Ant-Man's daughter. You've got the other girl in Hawkeye. You've got Patriot here. You've got the twins in WandaVision. You've got potentially Miles Morales.
Potentially.
Soon. They are very clearly setting up for a Young Avengers, whether it's Phase 4.
Phase 5
or Phase 5, it is coming in the near future.
Yes.
I was thinking that the second they announced the Miss Marvel show, I was like,
oh yeah, you've got Miss
Marvel too.
I'm like, that's it. That's right there. I was just at a comic book shop the other day, and immediately I was thinking that I was like, oh look, it's Miss Marvel, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna make this into a movie now. They're just slowly setting up all the blocks for it,
Yeah,
they are very, very clearly setting the standard and setting the path for a Young Avengers, either TV show or movie.
Whatever the case, they're setting.
Whatever the case may be, it wouldn't surprise me if they go TV show with it, because you have the twins debuting with Disney Plus. You have Eli Bradley on Disney Plus. You're going to have what is her name in Hawkeye? I need to look it up now. You guys continue. I'm
gonna move on to the next subject here, but they set up Joaquin Torres, which is Hawkeye's buddy, at the end of episode 4 or 5. Up to episode 5, the Falcon suit's damaged, and he looks at his buddy, his government buddy, who's been helping him since episode 1, saying, "You can keep it." And in the comic books, there's
he becomes the new Falcon.
He becomes the new.
Which
Falcon.
in the comic books, he is a mutant who has his own wings and becomes Falcon, but very easy to switch that for this and give him the Falcon wings.
But now that they have mutants, or they could make him a mutant, whatever the case may be.
And side note, Kate Bishop is the character's name.
Kate Bishop, thank you. So Kate Bishop is joining again, all theorized, but they're all setting this.
It would be incredibly surprising to me if they don't go Young Avengers route with the amount of people that they're casting for this. As far as Joaquin goes, potentially becoming the new Falcon, I honestly believe that it was more of just a wink and a nod to the fans.
They do a lot of wink and a nods.
Yeah,
which could always go anywhere or go nowhere.
I think it's one of those things where if it seems like people are excited about him, then they might bring him around. But otherwise, I think it was more just hey, you can keep the wings.
Right. My gosh, they're going to they very well could, or they very well.
Right. They very well could become nothing.
Right. Because he was trying to mess with the wings. Like, hey, don't mess with that. Whenever you guys, government, Sam was saying.
Kind of like how in the first Iron Man movie, back when it was Terrence Howard as Rhodey.
Right.
He looks at the old silver suit and he's like, next time, baby. Very easily at that moment could either have been a throwaway line for the fans, like, oh yeah, see, like, because at that point they had no idea what was happening. So it could be like that could be just a throwaway line, or it could be something where that he is going to take up the wings and Cap 4 comes around and he's his wingman. Pun intended.
There's a lot of MCU stuff they set up, but they never go back to, or they have it and they'll like, we're going to put that in our back.
Yeah, they'll circle around for now. Yeah,
in the future. But I think those were, and then Sharon Carter as one of the big bads that could easily lead into Armor Wars.
I 100% think that's where they're going with it.
So where that will connect, or Sharon Carter, now that she has connections back with the CIA.
Yeah, because the synopsis for Armor Wars is that
the new Disney Plus.
That Stark Tech starts showing up on the black market and starts showing up all over the place. And so Rhodey has to track it down and figure out where it's coming from and where it's going.
So,
supposedly Justin Hammer is going to be returning in that.
In the new Disney Plus show, which is scheduled to come out in 2022, or is that 23, 24?
Let's find out.
So it's one of those two, but you have all those potential, and I hope now that you have Falcon set up and maybe you can have a Bucky crossover there. You want to see these crossovers for people helping him out. So it's not, if he's going around the world calling for help, looking for tracking, you hope he's going to get Captain America. He's going to get some of his other buddies involved in Armor Wars. It's not just the Rhodey show, but we'll see.
All this stuff makes me excited because I mentioned that I mentioned it really, really early in the podcast. Not this episode, but like I think the first or second episode. But I did not grow up reading Marvel comics. I did not grow up reading like a lot of superhero stuff. So hearing you guys talk about this stuff, I'm like, the possibilities sound freaking endless.
It's expected 2022.
So cool.
2022.
Yeah. Which to balance on that point, Alberto, I've never really been a big comic book reader myself either. Most of my knowledge of comic books and comic book history and lore has been gained through the internet and through, reading articles and all of that sort of stuff. I've never really been a big comic book reader. So yeah, it is definitely kind of that same aspect of almost excitement of seeing these things that people love and seeing where they've come from comic books and seeing them adapted to the screen. For me, it's the first time. And you're getting to know these characters strictly from an on-screen basis, and then you're learning more about their history and more about their stuff by reading articles, going back and looking at stuff, and like all that stuff. And it gives you more of an appreciation going into it then as well.
Hell yeah, dude.
I love reading the comic books. So what I love to do is go back, watch the movies, read the comics, or vice versa if I read the comics in the past. So there's, as a 40-year-old guy, sometimes I have to pick and choose what I want to do, but those very few moments I love, like what you're saying, Christian, go on the internet, learn more about it, or go to my local library or try to download it on an app. But let's just keep moving with the forward of the future with some of the news. They finally did it. Disney finally pulled the plug. And you know what they did? They're putting Black Widow on Disney Plus with premiere access, with joint sessions in the movies. I want to ask you guys, are you seeing it in the theaters or are you paying the $20-$30 to see it on your home screen?
Remind me, do you have the release date handy? Because I know they delayed it again. Is it first week of June?
It's July.
Is it July?
It's July.
So in
Let's
July,
look at it.
It will heavily depend on kind of what the real world situation is looking like for me.
It's July 9th, 2021.
Depending on what the options are and depending on how many people you need, maybe I'll just get a bunch of people together and rent out a movie theater. You know what I mean? Get a bunch, we get maybe we make it a man cave outing.
A man cave outing where we're filming our reactions, watching
we rent out, or even not filming the reactions, but just immediate afterthought reactions. Who knows? But so I think barring something like that, I don't think I'm gonna go to the theater with the general public just yet.
But you'll rent out a movie theater.
I might rent if it's feasible, if it's an option, and if I have a bunch of other people who want to see it with me, perhaps I would do that. Otherwise, I'll probably just pay the $30 and watch it on Disney Plus.
Alberto, your choice. What do you think?
If you asked me this last week,
I'm asking you right now, or whatever. Sorry, give me your thoughts.
Okay. Right now, as of right now, most likely, yes, I'll end up seeing it in theaters only because I just saw my first movie back in the theaters last night for the first time. Which was
Demon
Slayer. There was a Demon Slayer movie that came out here to the States. It came out in Japan last year, but it was delayed for the States for a whole year. And went to go see it, and it was surreal. It was super surreal. They had this really cute little ad at the beginning of the movie, and it kind of let you know, like, keep your mask on, all this kind of stuff. And at the very end, they're like, welcome back to the movies. And just hearing that, and hearing like the surround system again, laying back in those big chairs, it felt super odd. I didn't feel 1,000%. I'm only half vaccinated at the moment, but everyone was pretty courteous about like the whole mask things. They have hand sanitation wipes or whatever at the front door. So I brought two and I gave two to Ariella, and we just cleaned our seats before we sat down. And before
what theater was it? If you don't mind me asking.
AMC. So what's really nice is that like when we
AMC in what city?
Naperville.
So Naperville, Illinois, AMC.
Yeah. So we went to that one, and what's really nice about the AMC ones, at least, I don't know, I can't speak for the other ones. We originally we were gonna go to this other theater, Classic Cinema, I think was the name of the company. But at AMC, if you book like a seat for two, the seats in front of you, seats behind you, and the seats to the left and right of you are completely closed out for some extra, like just some extra spacing. And it was nice because like you walk in and like you look at the app and it looks like the place is gonna be packed, and you walk in, it's like it's half packed, it's only half capacity, and I feel all right about it just because most people were kind of courteous, and I think probably because most of us were like, oh, okay, finally we're finally back at the damn movies. Like let's not blow this chance, guys. Like this is the first time we can finally sit here and watch a movie. So as long as the world is okay by then, and by then I'll be fully vaccinated, I will definitely want to see it in theaters. I probably won't see it midnight release when it is packed to the brim with germs, but I'll maybe on a Saturday morning when it's only like half capacity.
I think I want to see it in theaters. I would rather see it in theaters first. If it's going to be there, I would rather pay the $13
I think I would rather
see
it in theaters, but depending on the situation, I might end up just either way. I'm going to see it. That's the thing I can guarantee you.
We'll see it.
If theater isn't an option, this will be a movie that I will do the premiere access for. I haven't done it for any of the other ones. I didn't do it for Mulan. I didn't do it for Raya and the Last Dragon. I no offense to either of those movies, just wasn't something I was willing to pay $30 at home for.
I'm waiting for Raya to hit the free access.
It should be soon.
Yeah, but I think it's this summer.
Yeah. And so I think I would much prefer to see it in theaters, but we'll see.
Yeah. Let's talk about the next one, and I believe Alberto was on our private chats. The Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings trailer finally hit. It is rumored this takes place during the blip. That's what I was reading. So if
Oh,
anyone
wow.
has different
Interesting. I
information,
did not see that.
so I
Yeah,
heard
I didn't see
it
that.
might be taking during the blip,
So during that 5-year window.
during that 5-year window,
Hmm.
which is guys, your reaction to the trailer for this. We're right now looking at the poster for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Alberto, you had a lot of comments about this. What do you think about this movie, Shang-Chi?
For the sake of time, I'll keep it short. But one, super pumped, super excited. I'm a sucker for martial arts, kung fu type of style of movies. There was a old kung fu channel back when I used to live at my old house, like growing up with my family, and it was like a free little channel. So many free kung fu movies, and that immediately gave me this huge love for like the hand-to-hand choreography and whatnot. The trailer looks like finally I'm just gonna say this, and hopefully we are unanimous with this thought. But Iron Fist was not what I was hoping Iron Fist was gonna be as a TV show. Unfortunately,
I didn't watch it.
I watched the first few episodes, and I couldn't watch the rest. And this is coming straight off of Daredevil, which I thought was fantastic. Punisher, which I thought was fantastic. And then I remember I was like, I'm gonna check out Iron Fist. And I just really couldn't get into that. And ever since then, I've been just longing for something along those lines. And Falcon and Winter Soldier started to itch that scratch for me with a lot of hand-to-hand combat. It was really finally a lot cleaner than the Winter Soldier movie camera work was. And I can only imagine this was going to be that much more better. I have nonstop praise Aquafina. I cannot wait. Once again, Aquafina is going to be again in another big old Disney buck role.
Yeah, she is definitely
on
the rise as far as the movie popularity goes.
I can't wait. And this
She's
movie,
the comedic relief. Aquafina is the comedic relief. She's the Darcy Lewis of this movie. She's the everyman person.
Yeah.
And
we're finally getting the real Mandarin.
The real Mandarin, which
has been 20 some odd years in the running.
There was some picture that like I did not realize this, but I guess like in Iron Man 1, there was like that thing hanging up in the back of the 10 rings.
The 10 Rings terrorist
organization
was who kidnapped Tony Stark.
I haven't seen Iron Man 1 in so many years.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that. And then as soon as I saw it, I was like, they've been kind of wanting to go down that route 20 years ago. Is
one of the things that were in the back burner for a long time.
Yeah, you have that in the background of that. You have the fake Mandarin in Iron Man 3. You have the small like short with him where he's in prison and the real prison. Mandarin like he sends people to threaten him like for pretending to be him. You have the thug in Ant-Man who has the 10 ring tattoo on his neck.
Yeah, this really has been a
they have been building up to this for a long time, and I know there were a lot of Iron Man fans who were very upset that they didn't get a real Mandarin in Iron Man 3 because traditionally speaking, the Mandarin is a big Tony Stark villain. And so I know there were a lot of people who were upset with that, but I think this is what they've been waiting for. They've been waiting for a movie where he makes sense. And I think tying it into this martial arts film, this pretty much from what I could see in the trailer, majorly Asian inspired film, all sorts of Asian heritage running through this film. I think that is hopefully going to fit in fantastic.
Yeah,
it looks cool.
High hopes, and I'm just hoping they stick.
I know nothing about this character, so I am very excited to see what this comes about. He looks really cool. Even in this poster, he looks really cool. He doesn't necessarily look like a super jacked like superhero guy. He looks like a dude who will kick my ass, but he doesn't look like a superhero necessarily.
It looks like a Jackie Chan, like the Jackie Chan. He looks
he looks like a dude that you wouldn't want to piss off, and like he'll kick your ass and steal your girlfriend.
I am gonna I am not quoting myself. I'm gonna quote Dan, one of the other cavemen. His opinion on this trailer was, it looks like a martial arts movie with Marvel flair. So he was not very 100%. Excited with it.
Dan's not excited about anything.
It's hard. Well, Okay, we're not gonna. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to. I'm just passing. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Without him doing it, I just wanted to give his personal opinion that he shared with us, which we'd like to share with the audience. So not everyone is super excited as all of us. So
but we also have known for a while now that Dan is getting pretty burnt out on.
Dan is getting
MCU.
burnt on MCU. So
There is a lot to follow through, which I understand, and especially now even the adding of all of these MCU TV shows only continues the track of things you need to have watched, and it's one of those things which I think this might even be a conversation for potentially a different episode down the line.
Right,
would be as time goes on. How much harder will it be for new fans to get into MCU movies?
Where do I need to start? Do I need to start everything?
How much do I need to see? And so I think that'll be an interesting line to follow here. And I really do think you can tell, looking at Phase 4 and what they've got going forward, that we are really going to see a changing of the guard going forward.
Oh yeah, no, there's
you've got the Eternals coming up. You've got Shang-Chi. You've got the new Blade movie coming. You've got all of these films that are going to be setting up new characters and films that are setting up more recent characters that aren't 20 years established. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that's going to help ease people's transition into the current slate of MCU films and TV shows.
Let's get into one other trailer that finally hit. The Loki trailer, which is coming on Disney Plus.
We've seen a couple trailers now at this point. Two, I believe. Yeah, the final trailer for it.
And they've confirmed that this is going to be a time traveling show because this is where Loki has to clip the branches of the alternate realities he's made. And there's images of him wearing a jumpsuit that says time remnant. Meaning that he wasn't supposed to be there.
Right. So in Avengers Endgame, when they screw up the time heist.
Yes.
And that version of Loki from the 2012 Avengers movie escapes with the Tesseract.
The space
Essentially
stone.
What happens is it creates all of these branches of time and space that split off and creating all these alternate realities.
Because Loki's probably messing with time.
Right. Well, not even because he's messing with time, but because that's not what was supposed to happen.
Or whatever. I mean, he potentially could have made one branch, but he's making multiple branches.
And so now he's being sent as kind of a, hey, even if you didn't do it on purpose, you're the reason this is happening.
Or you did do it on purpose, and we're going to make you fix it.
Right. Yeah, you've got to fix this. And so I'm super excited for this show. We get to kind of backtrack to Tom Hiddleston as peak villainous Loki, the snarky, only focusing on himself Loki. Not that I didn't love his, turn to the light in Thor Ragnarok, but this
he would have easily turned back given the chance.
This is him. This is him at his peak, and I am super excited to see where we go for this show. And we've got a few weeks. We've got about a month, about 6 weeks before this show is going to be hitting Disney Plus.
We got the Bad Batch to fill us in.
Bad Batch to fill the batch, which for people who are in the Star Wars animated TV show world, that's a big deal for them.
Yeah, when is this show coming out? It's
June 11th. It's coming June 11th. So we get this, and then right when this ends, we get Black Widow. So Marvel
correct me if I'm wrong. I think Loki is 6 episodes as well, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, correct?
I do not know that fact, but I was just thinking to myself the other day that we've had last year, we had nothing Marvel. And over the years, we'd have to wait 1 to 2 years before the next Marvel entry. This year, we're going to be getting almost back to back MCU content, whether in the form of Disney Plus or a movie theater experience, building
6 episodes.
up. Thank you of Loki. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think going back to what you were just saying a couple minutes ago, there's a lot of stuff, and it's going to be hard for newer people to pick this up unless they haven't been following, or they're going to have to sit aside and start watching it to really get into it.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for someone just to jump in and
Yeah,
say,
it's going to be
what's
hard for
going on?
casual fans to follow, and it's going to be hard for new fans to jump in. And so I really think that's kind of based on everything that we've seen as far as what Disney has announced that the MCU is going to be developing in the coming years. I think they're really setting Avengers Endgame as kind of a breaking point.
Where where newer people can start jumping in, like, yeah, you can go back here, but you really, to know this newer stuff, you don't need to.
You don't need it. Yeah.
I think that is definitely a point. They need to start doing that, and but they're doing it where they're not going to completely forget about the past.
Yeah,
they're slowly breaking.
Yeah. Or doing more of these isolated shows that really, they do things that are connected, but they're not going to have long, they're not going to have like you could watch the Loki show potentially with very little knowledge of what else is going on, or following a small storyline going through. You don't necessarily have to have watched all 30 Marvel projects. And right now, you don't need to watch WandaVision to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Right, exactly.
And assumingly, you don't need to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier or want to watch Loki. So I think that's they're well aware of that fact. If you watched Endgame and you've watched Infinity War, you probably have a better understanding of what's happening. So that's kind of it right now for everything from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Overall, we kind of gave it between a 7 and 8 overall between the three of us.
Alberto, real quick, not to cut you off, Bobby.
No, you're good.
Alberto wasn't here when we were touching on it. Yeah. What were your thoughts on Sam's cap suit
at the end?
Yeah, his new cap suit. What were your thoughts on it?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know too much about Marvel. That is the suit from the comics.
That is basically 99% comic accurate suit.
I was like, I saw it and I was like, that is straight out of a page. I like it. I like how much it really fits to the comic one. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll get some hate though for it, at the fact that I wish they did almost like a modern revision with what they did with Captain America, and I think they will. I mean, Captain America: First Avenger, they basically did as close to the comics while somewhat being a little bit more modern in the First Avenger, and little by little they made it more military uniform. Yeah. While still keeping that Captain America, look and vibe. So I'm hoping that as time goes on, they kind of start to do the same thing. They give it the same treatment. I like how pop and vibrant it is because it's super comic booky. But long-term wise, like imagine this suit for an entire Infinity War Endgame kind of like double feature movie for 4 hours. I'd be like, okay, listen, I love Sam Wilson, but at the same time, this man needs new threads at some point. Yeah.
Well, and so just to also touch,
they got to make new toys too.
Yeah, I do remember seeing this. It is not at all confirmed. They are still obviously in early stages of writing, so the odds that this is what it's going to be called are very slim to none, in my opinion. But I did see an article earlier that there is a leak spreading around that supposedly the subtitle for the next Captain America movie will be "Man Out of Time."
What? Really?
It's obviously, I highly doubt that that'll be the official subtitle because obviously it just got announced. They're still in the process of writing it. I doubt they have an idea what it's going to be called.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. Potentially leads you to are they talking about Bucky? Is that talking about old Cap? Who knows if that is the case. Again, still super early. They just announced it. They're still writing it, so I doubt that's the case. But interesting nonetheless.
That is super interesting. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I'm really excited to see what they do in general, just with Captain America. I know we talked about it earlier in the show, but I think whatever they do with Captain America 4 is really going to be the real big introduction as to what can they do, how should they introduce live action Miles Morales, what can they do for Green Lantern, and there's been
definitely going to be groundbreaking.
And there was talks about the Superman, making an African American Superman for the live action films, and a lot of there's a lot of pullback from one way and the other. But regardless, that's a big conversation to have if and when that's also happens. So, it's insane to see that this is happening. Ever since I was a kid, I never thought I was going to see this kind of stuff. The closest thing, anyone, a person of color had, we had Blade.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, we had Shaft, which is, oh my God, Shaft, or no, not Shaft, Steel.
Yeah.
With Shaquille O'Neal. That one's the Shaquille O'Neal movie, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So we haven't had like the biggest amounts of characters to get to pick from. A lot of times,
most of them are probably within the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see it just kind of keep evolving, and I'm sure that in a few years, when I think her name is American Chavez or something like that, she is the LGBT kind of like new superhero in Marvel. I was at the shop and I saw like her first couple issues there. I know they just made her like a few years ago in Marvel Comics, and she's gonna make her debut in the MCU relatively soon, hopefully in the next.
I think they said that she was going to be.
phase.
I think potentially they said that she might be debuting in the Miss Marvel TV series, if I'm remembering correctly.
Maybe I
think that's where I'm. That's somewhere in the back of my brain. That's kind of pinging a little bell, because I think they said Miss Marvel will be debuting in Captain Marvel 2, and then she's going to get her own show. And I think they said that character will debut in that show, I believe.
I'm just excited to see all these new cultures.
I'm excited to see these characters get their spotlight without. I'm excited that they're not having to, for the most part. No, they're not. For the most part, they're not having to twist existing characters to get diversity and representation.
They don't have to do a lot of gender swapping.
They don't have to do a lot of race swapping, gender swapping. They're pulling characters who are already grounded in these race identities and in these gender identities, and pulling these characters who already identify with these struggles and with these experiences, and they're bringing them to the spotlight and letting these characters shine and letting them show what they've dealt with and what they've gone through. And I think that's fantastic, because so often in Hollywood nowadays, they take a character who's primarily white or primarily Asian or Hispanic or whatever and convert it to something else, just for the sake of diversity. And I think that that's good in a sense, but it's also hurtful in a sense, because you're taking away something that character identifies with their history, just for the sake of making it different.
Marvel Comics, since the beginning, has always been more about the human aspect about being a superhero, because they've tackled alcoholism with Tony Stark. They kind of touched upon it in the movies, but
it was very
barely. They throw away. They turned it into something different in Iron Man.
It was almost a joke.
But they turned it into like him dying instead of his drinking.
I think Iron Man 3, they had the alcoholism from his like trauma of dying, if I'm not mistaken.
It was more about Iron Man 3 was more about his PTSD from the events.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That definitely turned into some alcoholism, I think, in that film, but not nearly as serious as it should have been.
No, in Iron Man 2, it was him being drunk at a party, using the Iron Man suit, and Rhodey had to confront him about it and knock him down. And then Nick Fury showed up at a donut shop the next morning. So that was kind of that, but they didn't really deal with the Demon in a Bottle series. Peter Parker was always supposed to be about the everyman person who had everyday care, who had problems like everyone else, who you could relate to. And I think it was great that Marvel started to make superheroes for everyone that more represented everyone.
It's great. It's great that we're going to start seeing, like Alberto said, we're going to start seeing all these characters who haven't really gotten a chance to show what they can do in a live action sense. And I think that's fantastic, and I'm really excited for that.
So we have a lot to look forward to. So until we do the next MCU thing, which will be a couple weeks, we're gonna do next week. I think we're gonna talk about our reaction to the newest Mortal Kombat movie on HBO Max, and overall talking about how video games have been translated to movies, and if it's still is it still worth translating video games to movies. So
Alberto, I know you and me have both been waiting for this one for a while.
Oh man. Well, needless to say, I mean, there's never been a bad video game movie ever made.
No,
right, guys, never. Every single one has been.
Every single one has been just fantastic. You know, home run out of the park. So good. We're being sarcastic for
I
those.
You're
should,
very
yeah, I was gonna say,
sarcastic.
I was like, I should hope everyone could.
But I
Yeah,
do
well-
want to say there are very mixed reactions with the new Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm
and
very.
our-
I mean, I know there's mixed reactions from us already. So
Already. We already
we'll,
talked about
we'll,
it, so-
we'll save it for next week. So definitely, if you haven't seen Mortal Kombat yet, it's free on HBO Max right now. Go watch it. Give it a look. See, for anybody who is not aware, it is a hard R-rated movie.
Oh
It
yes,
is a
Lots of
hard R.
gore, lots of swearing, lots of gore and lots of swearing.
lots of Kano.
Yes. So anybody who is particularly squeamish with blood or gore, or anybody with small children who you don't want tainted by lots of swearing, maybe watch it by yourself first and then figure out if it's acceptable for anybody else in your household. Otherwise, come back, join us next week. We're going to be talking about it, probably arguing about it, knowing us.
A little bit, and then we'll talk about overall video games overall and some of that history. So
I feel like that'll probably have to be a two-parter, to be honest.
it might be a two-parter.
We'll see.
We got a lot going on, so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. So everyone, have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Take care, guys.
Have a
Take
good
care,
night.
everyone.